So, hello everybody. I'm Solvikar, and I'm here with
Jose Vega.
Jose Vega.
Jose Vega.
Jose Vega, bro.
I'm not done talking about peace, man. You can't manipulate the American population anymore. People will not fall for your antics.
So I have heard in the media that you have been thrown around as pushing anti-Semitic tropes,
Yeah.
Hamas apologists, and things of that nature. Why do you think the media has been throwing out these accusations against you?
I think it's because of the fact that I have rejected the war party. It's because of the fact that I've rejected, Zionism and its ugly head and how it's rearing with imperialism, and it has slaughtered a bunch of Palestinians. It has slaughtered a bunch of innocent people in Gaza. And it is because I oppose that. It is because I've opposed the war party, as I call it, that we have been so effective in amplifying our message of peace. We're very much anti-war, but we're also pro-development and pro-peace. And because of how effective we've been, the media has had to counterpunch and attack us, because the media is now a tool for the colonial empires that exist right now. It's a tool for the, as I call it, the Epstein class that is trying to silence any real anti-establishment voices by smearing us. So that's why I think they're coming after us.
Got it. So District 15 is one of the most poorest districts in all of the country, right? Yep. And it blows my mind that AIPAC and Israel is an issue of contention for a congressional race. A foreign country has their interest in this district, and it blows my mind as to why that is. Why do you think that this is an issue of contention?
Well, for one, AIPAC likes to, and it lobbies like AIPAC. There's another one called NORPAC, which is the same thing. It's an American-Israeli Political Action Committee.
Yes.
That they do is they invest in politicians early. So they analyze all the states and they look for rising stars like young city councilmen like Richie Torres.
Yeah.
When he was elected to the city council in 2013, he was the youngest city councilman ever elected. So
Wow.
He's young, he's got a rising career, right? So what AIPAC and these other lobbies want to do is they look for those kinds of people, invest in them, and get them into a federal position. So by the time they get to the Congress, they are already so co-opted and so in the pockets of AIPAC that they know, that they can control them. And one of the places that it's easy to do that is in places like the Bronx. You also see that down in Brooklyn with Hakeem Jeffries, where you have towns like Brownsville, which are also in just terrible shape, like the Bronx is. But they take advantage of areas that are impoverished. They take advantage of areas where people aren't as educated, people don't care so much about the political situation, and they think they can just pump a ton of money in these ads and keep a politician in there. So they've invested in Richie Torres.
Right.
And he has $15 million in his coffers. They don't intend to just give that up out of nowhere. They don't intend to just, say, we're going to let him go. So they are going to fight tooth and nail to keep that. And they know that districts like this are vulnerable, which is why what we're doing is so dangerous, because it goes beyond the electoral politics. It's not just about some race or some election. I care about the people of the Bronx, and I want them to be educated. I want to inoculate them against all of the propaganda, against all of the AIPAC BS. I want people to be educated in what it means to be an American citizen, and what it means to be an educated person, an educated citizen, so that they are not manipulated by anybody with a big checkbook.
So I like that you brought up American citizen. If I may ask, where are you from, like ethnicity?
Both of my parents were refugees of the Salvadoran Civil War.
Got it. Okay, so from Salvador. So Salvador, you're born here, I assume?
Born and raised
right?
in the Bronx, yeah.
So for you as a person of immigrant families and was first generation American, what does it mean to be an American to you? And what do you say to those people of color who feel as though the Constitution and its ideals were not made for them?
Well, I think that people should read the Declaration of Independence, first of all. And I think that whether it was or wasn't, whether the Founding Fathers thought that there would be a man named Jose Vega one day saying that we should all read the Declaration of Independence is irrelevant, because it is our document. Whether we want to, the Founding Fathers had a lot of flaws. They did. And there are some people I don't rep. Thomas Jefferson is not my guy. But Alexander Hamilton and Gouverneur Morris. Gouverneur Morris was a founding father who was from the Bronx. In fact, a lot of the areas of the Bronx, you got Morris Heights, Morrisania, you have Gouverneur Street, was named after him. He's famous because at the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia, he was one of the founding fathers who stood up and said, "Are you serious? You want slaves? You want them to count for 3/5 of the vote? So are they people or are they property? Okay, why don't we say your house counts for 3/5 of the person? Come on, let's stop being ridiculous here. Let's abolish slavery, or it'll be a stain on our history forever."
Right.
That's from the Bronx. That was Gouverneur Morris. He's buried down at St. Anne's Church on 138th Street in St. Anne's Avenue. A lot of people don't know that. But that's my founding father, right? And so when people think the Constitution isn't for them, I would say, well, are you for the Constitution? Because the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence was written for posterity, meaning for generations to come. And the founding fathers knew that the documents that they wrote weren't perfect either, which is why they said, we're going to create a process and a system of government here that can forever refine itself and continue to be perfected, right? And that includes anybody who either emigrated here yesterday or has generations down to the founding fathers. Everyone is entitled to those ideals and the principles that lie in the Constitution. And, I think what we see right now with the Trump administration just completely walking all over the Constitution, just completely walking over American citizens' rights, the illegal abductions by ICE. My own stepdad was illegally abducted back in November, the week leading up to Thanksgiving. He was abducted by ICE, and he was held in Delaney Hall for a week, and then he was flew out to Texas, and then he was eventually deported out of here. I think that not only do we need to abolish ICE, we need to understand something, that the trampling of the Constitution did not begin with Trump, right? It was an expansion of the surveillance state. ICE was created in 2003 as a response to what happened with 9/11, and it was created as a response to the Patriot Act as well, which gave the power, and also of DHS, which gave the power for Homeland Security to create these organizations like ICE and other things. But it was more of an excuse to expand the surveillance state to spy on American citizens. Because what's being done to undocumented immigrants now is going to happen and is happening to American citizens already. They're just testing this stuff out. Like Palantir and these other companies are testing out the technology on undocumented migrants to be used on American citizens.
Wow, interesting. So you stated that in your last campaign, you were sleeping in your car, and in March of this year, there was a person who was conducting suspicious activity inside of your home residence. And with all of that being done, I want to ask you, what is it that drives you to push forward through these hardships that you have to go through, and go through in spite of these potential dangers that you may face?
The belief that people get the government they deserve. And I say that lovingly. I really do, because I don't believe that anybody deserves to be living in the conditions that we have now. And yet I know that if people don't take up the responsibility to clean up the government, they're going to continue to get what we have now. Therefore, I'm saying, like, all right, well, I think my neighbors deserve better, so I'm going to stand up for them. I'm doing this also because I believe the way things should be is that if you tell the truth and you fight for principles, you should be allowed to get elected. That is not the objective reality right now. The objective reality is who has more money. Like, look at Thomas Massey. That guy was in there for 14 years. And even though he's a Republican, Donald Trump attacked him. And they spent $32 million to unseat him. They knew how much they needed to spend, right? That was very much a money race, not a principled race. I believe that people should be able to get elected on the basis that they tell the truth and have actual viable solutions and are driven by principle. And I'm working to make sure that that does become the reality of this. President John Quincy Adams never campaigned. This is one of the early presidents. He's like, I'm not going to campaign. People know what I stand for, and people know who I am, and if they want to vote for me, then they should. That was his principle. That's what he believes in. He won. No, the other reason I do is because, like, I want to show people that anybody can run for office. You know, my mom is a bus aide. My dad's a lineman.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my mom wasn't a film director, and that's no shade to Zoran. I like Zoran.
Yeah.
You know, but what I found out quickly, the reason I was living in a car was because when I quit my job 2 years ago, I was working at a coffee shop. I was looking at the Boogie Down Grind in Hunts Point.
Okay.
When I quit my job, I found out that you can only pay yourself on a campaign no more than whatever you stated you made in taxes.
Wow.
So that was like about $20,000 a year. So I was like, oh, okay. So I was like, fine, whatever, you know. And you quickly find out you can't live off of $400 a week.
Right.
So, and I thought that was unfair because, like, what if you're a teacher, as you are, and you want to run for Congress, right? You know, does that mean you have to quit your job? And then what? Now you have to be responsible for fundraising, and you have to be responsible for everything that comes on a teacher's salary.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, you know, teachers should be paid more, quite frankly, but like, I don't even think a teacher's salary is enough to quit your job and then be able to raise that much money a year in order to actually do this.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely not.
Regardless, though, we pursue and we push on anyway, despite all of that, because it has to be done. And despite all the limitations that they put on us, despite every obstacle in our path, we don't complain about it. We just fight through it anyway so that we can get in a position where we can make it better for anybody to do this much easier than we had.
And I heard that you have a plan called the Space Civilian Construction Corps, and I really like that idea. Could you tell the listeners a little bit more about that idea?
Oh, yeah. This is like my bread and butter. This is like my Green New Deal, basically. But the Space CCC, the CCC idea comes from FDR. You know, FDR had this plan called the Civilian Conservation Corps, where it took a lot of young men after the Great Depression who had no education, no skills, and he gave them work camps where they learned how to read, basic literacy, and they learned how to work with basic engineering, and they're responsible for most of the national parks that exist today in the United States. I'm saying let's take the young people of the Bronx who are between the ages of 18 to 30, who high school graduates, high school dropouts, who are, college graduates, college dropouts, juvenile delinquents, maybe nonviolent offenders as well. And you're saying, we are going to train you to be engineers in a 2-year accelerated program where you'll be working side by side with the Army Corps of Engineers and with union leaders who know how to get labor done. And we're going to have our young people be responsible for top-down inspections of all the public housing, and they'll be responsible for fixing it. They'll be responsible for the cross-Bronx train line that we want to build from east to west, because we don't have that. And they'll be building high-speed rail. We want the young people of the Bronx to be building high-speed rail in this country. But not only will they be getting engineering skills, you know, to work on domestic projects, I want them to be working on space projects as well. I want them building satellites. I want them working at NASA. I want them building infrastructure that'll be on the moon someday, because you have to give people a national project, you know, because those kinds of developments, those kind of scientific achievements are what drives progress. You know, for every dollar we invested in the Apollo program, we got $9 back. That wasn't quantifiable dollar bills. That was in technology, technological advancements. You know, the insulation in walls, the pacemaker, our cell phones are a direct result of the progress we made in the Apollo project. Our future does lie in the stars. And I want to set the groundwork now so that the reality is that the way in which we get annoyed when a train is delayed or when our planes are delayed, I want that annoyance to be the reality for some 25-year-old who is getting on a rocket ship to the moon and complaining, oh my God, it's late again. Jesus Christ, you know. I want what the Artemis, you know, did you hear about that flyby that the astronauts did where they went to the first? You didn't know about that? No. Astronauts went to the furthest side of the moon just a few months ago, and they had seen an experience that shook them to their core.
Mm-hmm.
Or take, for example, what happened with Apollo 8 when astronauts first orbited the moon. Almost the entire population of the planet tuned in to watch that broadcast happen. Everyone was so excited about that. And it's the same year when the Vietnam War is raging, when Dr. King is shot, when JFK is shot, and you have these astronauts on the furthest side of the moon looking at all this on the Earth, and they see this beautiful planet, and they just read the first 8 verses of Genesis, and they end it by saying, and good night to all of you on the good Earth. I mean, that to me is just so moving that they can look at this different perspective of Earth and they see it that from very few human beings have been able to see, and they're like, oh my God, we are all on a spaceship. Earth is a spaceship. And we are all floating through space, and we have to work together in order to get to wherever it is we're going.
Right.
And so, to be able to give the opportunity for some 13-year-old who wants to explore the stars in a world that's free of poverty and free of war is what the Space Civilian Construction Corps is all about. So anyway, I hope that answers the question.
Yep, it was very helpful. Last question. I have a set of rapid fire questions for you just to see, are you valid in New York? So when you go to the store, right, the deli, you say, let me get a bacon, egg, and
Cheese.
chop.
Oh, chopped cheese.
Yep.
Yeah.
Chicken over.
Rice.
Nice.
There's a lamb over rice for me. But
Gotcha. Spin the
block.
Yep. We out.
Side.
Yeah. This man is valid in New York. Yeah, so that is all the questions that I had so far for you. Jose Vega, I really appreciate you taking the time out for this interview. Yeah, you guys know who to vote for on June 23rd.
Right? That's right. Early voting starts June 13th, though. VoteVega.nyc, and it's not the end. If we don't win the primary, don't matter, because we got a second shot in November. We secured enough signatures to get on the independent ballot as well. So win or lose the primary in June, we still got November. So stick around.
Okay.